Hello traders, welcome to another weekly market outlook. Today we are going to take a look at the fundamentals, the technicals and the trading ideas for the week ahead, covering dollar index, Euro USD, GBP USD, gold and BTC. Coming up next week, as you can see on my screen here on Forex Factory, we are expecting a Clement count change on GBP, also CPI year over year on GBP, and we're also expecting FOMC minutes on Wednesday next week. So we are going to pay attention to this news event as their outcome will definitely influence the fundamental bias of the pairs we are going to look at in this analysis. So let's head to the charts and see what we have. Starting with dollar index, as you can see here on my screen, dollar index, has been trending higher, creating higher highs, higher low, higher high. Then at this point in time, this is a pullback to this demand zone we pointed out a couple of times in our last weekly market outlook. So in the coming week, what I'm expecting to see is if there will be a possible breaker from this zone to the upside, then I'll look for a long opportunity to target that supply right there. That is my trading idea on the daily time frame for dollar index because overall the market structure still look bullish. After we had this market structure shift here, then came this break of structure here. So what we're experiencing now is a possible pullback, turning to this demand zone. And this demand zone, as you can see on my screen here, corresponds exactly with this 50% Fibonacci level. So at this point, next week, I'll be observing price action here to see if there will be a long opportunity to target that supply. Okay, so that is my expectation on the day time frame. Then on the 4 hours time frame, DXY, as you can see on the 4 hours time frame right now, is heading very close to this demand zone right here, this fresh unmitigated demand zone here. So next week, I'll be paying attention also to see if price give me a breakout to the upside, then any pullback will give me opportunity to long. Okay, but then if price should first and foremost pull back to this demand zone here by next week, then that will give me a direct long opportunity to target that supply without waiting for this pullback again. So that's my trading idea in the coming week. Right now, market is ranging between this high and this low. So what we are waiting to see is a possible breakout either from the upside or the downside to this demand zone. So that's what I'll be watching on dollar index in the coming week. All right, the next pair on our screen here is Euro USD, which is an inverse correlation of dollar index. If you look at Euro USD market structure wise, you can see that Euro USD is still bearish. Okay, we had a shift in market structure here, a break of structure here. These are protected high and our weak low. Then now what you're experiencing now is a pullback. So price now having mitigated this our supply zone around this price area. In the coming week, what I'll be looking out for is to short Euro USD. Okay? To do that, I'll be observing price action to see if there will be a kind of market structure shift here. Then any pullback there will give me opportunity to short Euro USD to this daily demand zone on the daily time frame. Also, if this supply zone should fail, maybe price break out of that supply zone, any newly demand zone created here will give me opportunity also to temporarily long Euro USD, targeting this supply zone area before looking for that overall short opportunity. Reason being that this is a protected high, lower high, this is a weak lower low. So we are expecting a continuation to create another break of structure below this price level. Then on the 4 hours time frame, if you look at Euro USD from this weekly high, price has been trending, creating lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. Then all of a sudden now you can see the price action now shift towards the upside. So price is here to mitigate this supply zone. So in the coming week, I'll be observing to see if price will push up a little more to fully mitigate this supply. In that case, I will look for a direct short opportunity towards the downside, targeting this demand zone right here, this fresh demand zone. Okay. Then also, just like on the daily time frame, If price should break out of this supply here, then that supply up there also becomes another target to look for an entry opportunity, okay, on the 4 hours time frame. But then, if by that next week, price first and foremost, instead of pushing back up to this supply, break out to the downside, then any pullback to a newly created supply zone here will give me a short opportunity to simply target that demand zone also. So that's my trading idea on EURUSD on the 4 hours time frame. The next one on our screen here is GBPUSD. And if you look at GBPUSD right here on the daily time frame, market structure wise, you can see that price is actually ranging between this high and low, just within this zone. Price is ranging here. So how are we going to trade this market condition? All right, in the coming week, what I'm going to do is to observe price action within this retested supply zone. This supply zone has been tested before, pull back, mitigated this demand zone, return back again to that supply zone. So what I will do is to also observe price action to see if there will be a pullback that will create a market structure shift breaking below this area to the downside, then any pullback will give me opportunity to short GBPUSD on the daily time frame. That will be my expectation in the coming week. Okay. Aside that, I will drop down to the lower time frame like 4 hours. You have this supply zone up here on the 4 hours time frame. You can see it here. This is a fresh 4 hours supply zone that is yet to be mitigated. Okay. So in the coming week, price may continue to that supply zone before any pullback or reversal. So if I see any continuation to that zone, that will give me a short opportunity to ride the trend all the way down on the 4 hours time frame. So those are the scenarios I'll be looking out for to see as soon as they play out, then I will look for an entry opportunity on GBP USD. The next pair on our screen here is gold. Now, what is happening on gold? If you look at price action here on the daily time frame, this is our all-time high. After our all-time high, we experienced this pullback, and then we had this lower high, lower low, lower high, and lower low. So on the daily time frame, you can see market structure is still bearish. Then we experienced this period of price consolidation here before that breakout to the upside. Now, if you check very well, on the daily time frame, this is our protected high on the daily time frame, while this is now our weak low. So just as we had the lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, what we're experiencing now is possible a new lower high before we may experience that continuation to give us a lower low. Will that continuation happen? It's not guaranteed, but based on market structure, that is how price moves. So right now, what I'm going to do in the coming week is that I'll be looking for a continuation of this my entry position already on the gold. Okay, because if you watch also, let me bring in Fibonacci here. If you bring Fibonacci and draw from this daily protected high to this low, you will see that price has already retraced to a 50% Fibonacci level. So there's possibility that market might reverse from this price level to continue to the downside. Also, the level where price is now is already within this supply zone. This is a supply zone here. Yeah, this is my preferred zone. But the whole of this zone is a supply zone. It's regarded as a supply zone. Okay. So price already has mitigated that zone. Okay. Then if you go down the 4 hours time frame, you see the reason why I entered this trade on the 4 hours time frame. So next week, I'm looking forward to see if price will continue to the downside, then I'll manage my position to control that entry all the way to this demand zone. Okay. If also it should fail and then price break out more deeper to this supply zone, then I'll take a control loss here. Then I'll look for another entry to continue that short. So that is my trading idea on the daily time frame. Then if you go down the 4 hours time frame, on the 4 hours, you can see that after price move away from this consolidation zone all the way to that supply, this is our 4 hour supply, you can see that price rejected to the downside. You see after this high here, a higher low, a higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, then a higher high. Then we experience a market structure shift here, a fractal market structure shift here to the downside, creating a new supply zone here, which is the reason why I stepped in at this level to short gold. Okay, and right now my first target is this demand zone here before I may look for a possible continuation to the downside. Okay, so next week, in case you are not yet in this trade, what you need to do is to observe if price should break out to the downside to this demand zone. Any newly created supply might give us a continuation to the downside. Okay, but then if by next week price opens and then it breaks out to the upside, then I'll simply take a control loss at this level. Then I'll position again to look for an entry. So that is the idea for gold in the coming week. All right, the last pair in our list today is BTCUSD. BTC on the daily time frame here, if you see market structure, we see that BTC technically is still bearish. Okay, but one thing you have to take note of is that this price level here corresponds with both daily and weekly demand zone. If you look at the chart very well, you see that this is a monthly demand zone. So price right now is within a monthly demand zone. So there's a possibility that price may continue to the upside, okay, or may also continue to the downside. So any trading decision we are making, we should take into account that price right now is within this monthly demand. I know the higher time frame controls the lower time frame. So now on the daily time frame here, if you look at the chart, we see that price within that monthly demand rejected to the upside, then this supply zone again held down the price. Okay, and now what we're experiencing is just a kind of ranging price action. So in the coming week, what I'll be observing to see is if the price will drop down to this demand zone, then that will be an opportunity to look for a long opportunity. Okay, if price should drop down to this demand zone, that will give us an opportunity to long. On the 4 hours time frame here, if you look at price action also, you see that price here is just ranging. There is no direction at the moment. Okay, after this initial move and loss of momentum around that daily supply, which also corresponds with this 4 hour supply here, so price began to range. So in the coming week, what I'm going to do is to see how price will react to this demand zone. Then I may look for a long within this demand zone in the coming week. Okay, targeting this supply. As you get to that supply, I'll also look for a short opportunity to target that overall demand zone, which also corresponds with this 4 hours demand. So my interest mainly is in this daily and 4 hours demand zone at this 59K level. Okay, so this demand zone here, if I'm taking any entry at this level, I'll be very cautious. To be a minimal risk. Okay, targeting that supply at that 64K level. Then as far as return back there, I'll look for a short targeting this demand. So that is my trading idea on BTC USD. So if you are getting value from this weekly market outlook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, scan the QR code on your screen to join our Telegram community. Here we share valuable market insights and trade ideas. We scan this QR code on your screen to join our Discord community, where we also share general market ideas, news events, macro outlook, and overall trade ideas. You can see on my screen here. This was the last trade ideas we dropped on EURUSD, and this idea is still very much valid. So be part of this community and you'll be getting value. Thank you and do have a wonderful trading week.